Evening, everybody. Welcome to the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live. Just a reminder that you are listening to us on WQEE 99.1 FM, the key out of Noonan. And we have got just a fantastic show for you today. I can't believe today is the day. Week 1 in the NFL. We got a Thursday night game coming up. The Detroit Lions taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. There's so much to get into in this show. We're going to talk about Foundry FC. Yes, I was at the press conference today. I will get into the new team that's in the National Indoor Soccer League for Columbus. We also have Nick Bosa getting paid, one of the top defensive ends in all of football. He should be ready as the 49ers will take on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I make picks. I make picks for week 1, and I'll also talk about fantasy football. Also, we have high school football and college football, and we will get into all of it. I promise you, this is going to be a very jam-packed show with all the sports that you can handle. And I'm glad that I'm able to come to you on Facebook Live and on the YouTube channel. Go ahead and like that Facebook page, The Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge. And while you're at it, while you're liking that Facebook page, swing over to Georgia Alabama Sports Live and like that Facebook page too, as I'm a part of Georgia Alabama Sports Live. And also subscribe to the YouTube channel for the Sports Beat and Georgia Alabama Sports Live. I'm excited because I'm going to be calling the Shaw Northside game with Thrift Behringer at Kinnett Stadium. Kickoff at 7 p.m. You can catch the live stream on Georgia Alabama Sports Live's Facebook page and YouTube channel. The battle for North Columbus. Shaw comes in 1-2 on the season, taking on the Northside Patriots, who are 2-1. It's their homecoming. You know that the Northside fan base is going to make an appearance at Kinnett Stadium, and they do have passionate fans that are going to fill up that home side of Kinnett Stadium. Shaw is also home to Kinnett Stadium, even though they have not played a true home game yet. The Shaw fans are going to be over on the other side. And this is really a fun rivalry. I cannot wait to call this game with Thrift Behringer. All right, I do want to talk about Foundry FC. We have a brand new soccer team in the National Indoor Soccer League, and I just happened to be at the press conference. You know, being the voice for the Columbus Rapids for the past 2 years, I felt that I needed to be there. Mainly, it was because I was curious. Look, I know that there's a lot of Rapids fans out there, including myself, that have gotten on this podcast. I've had plenty of former Columbus Rapids here on this podcast. I enjoy doing the coach shows. Look, we miss the Rapids. I mean, this officially closes the door on just an incredible indoor soccer franchise, and they have been the darlings here in the Fountain City. Had a men's team and a women's team, and it was incredible. We're still going to have indoor soccer in Columbus. I know it's not going to be called the Columbus Rapids, and I don't know why they're changing the name, but they wanted to go in a different direction. They wanted to have a new, clean slate, and I admit I'm optimistic. It could work out, but I did have a chance to talk to the commissioner of the NISL after the press conference. I told him that I was the voice of the Columbus Rapids for the past 2 seasons, and I'm hoping that they get somebody in there to start a new chapter in their broadcasting career, kind of like what I did 2 years ago when I was offered the position to be the voice of the Columbus Rapids, and it really has just taken off like wildfire, calling for the Columbus Lions and calling for the high school game of the week last year on CTV Beam, now to Georgia Alabama Sports Live, and it's really been a great partnership. But I think it's time for me to move on. As much as I love calling indoor soccer, it's going to be a little different. I mean, I might go to some games, and you got to remember, I mean, we all love the Rapids in this town, but remember, the Cottonmouths left, and then 2 years later, the Columbus River Dragons came. Not quite the same situation, but still, we have indoor soccer here in the Fountain City. We got a brand new team in Albany, the Albany Aces. We also have Magic City SC. Those are the 2 new expansion teams to enter the NISL. And so right now we're at 7 teams, and they're is plans for an eighth team. So in the 2024 season in the NISL, there will be 8 teams. Moving on, just a big shout out to just the Jordan Red Jackets and their staff and their community. Just a wonderful tribute. For those of you who don't know, the Napier family suffered a tragedy, and Jimmy Napier, his wife, the kid, they were honored at the Jordan softball game yesterday. And I just want to say a special prayer to the Napier family. And I can't imagine what they're going through right now. And that Jordan community is really hurting. And you got to remember, this is a very tight knit community. And the Jordan Red Jackets are family, and they are going to support their own. And that was a very special tribute at the softball stadium yesterday. All right, moving on to some news in the NFL offseason, because we have not officially started week 1 yet. I'm going to break down week 1 and I'm going to make picks. But Nick Bosa got paid. This makes me very happy as a San Francisco 49ers fan. 5 years, $170 million. He is the highest paid defensive end. I mean, he got Aaron Donald money, and Nick Bosa is going to be the pass rusher that the 49ers need just about every year. He is good for double-digit sacks. He was the MVP on the defensive side. He's won Defensive Rookie of the Year. He has made an impact for the 49ers when it comes to a pass rush. The 49ers, other pass rushers, do not form pressure like Nick Bosa does. Remember 2020 when Nick Bosa got hurt and he was out for the season? Well, the 49ers missed the playoffs that year. That's how much of an impact Nick Bosa has. And he should start week 1 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Right now, the 49ers are a 2-point favorite. And I know there was talks that George Kittle was banged up. There were talks that Jake Moody, the kicker, might not be a go. We do know that Ray McLeod is going to be a go. I'm going to pick this game later in the show. This is a toss-em game. It could go either way, but you'll have to find out to see what my picks are. Hey, I have my fantasy football draft tonight. I actually set it to auto pick. I'm actually happy. I did get Justin Fields and Tua Tagovailoa, so I'm not sure which quarterback I'm going to start, but we shall see. I mean, I got Freiermuth, the tight end from the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Najee Harris also got him on my fantasy team as well. I got the Dolphins defense. I mean, that's not a bad defense. Jalen Ramsey has been added to the team this year. I think the Dolphins are going to be the surprise team in the league. They look really good. And when Tua was healthy, remember the Dolphins were 8-3 last year. So that's something to wrap your head around as we get ready for the National Football League tonight. I can't wait. The Detroit Lions, the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm excited that football is back, but I have a dilemma on Sunday because the Falcons play at 1 against the Panthers, and the 49ers also play at 1 against the Steelers. This is why I get the NFL Red Zone, and I will just hit record. Because I have some other things going on Sunday, I will make sure that I record the games, and I will be watching them after my engagement. And I cannot wait for football in the National Football League. Remember, I have my high school football reaction show Saturday mornings. It'll be aired at 8 o'clock in the morning. Then I get up early Sunday morning and I have my college football reaction shows. And then Monday morning, I'll have my regular show, but it'll be an NFL reaction show. But Thursdays is the day where I make picks in the National Football League and I give you fantasy advice because I know that there are some talks. What defense should I play? Should I start Najee Harris against the 49ers defense? What about Justin Fields going up against the Green Bay Packers? Who knows? I think maybe Aaron Rodgers might be a sleeper fantasy quarterback as well. So let's go ahead and get into some of the matchups here on the Sports Beat. NFL Week 1. I already talked about the Detroit Lions and the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs are a 4.5-point favorite. They will probably not have Chris Jones, and they probably will not have Travis Kelce. I think that Travis Kelce might have a bone bruise. If that's the case, he's a tough guy. He could end up going. But do not be shocked if Patrick Mahomes just makes his wide receivers, they don't have a true wide receiver. Sky Moore, even though I have him on my fantasy team, I think I might start him. Sky Moore might be their number one receiver. You got Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Kadarius Toney. They don't have a number one receiver after letting Tyreek Hill go. Juju Smith-Schuster's no longer there. They still won a Super Bowl without Tyreek Hill. If Travis Kelce is not in the lineup, I still think Patrick Mahomes can find a way to put up points. But if Chris Jones is not on the D line for Kansas City, can Detroit, with that offensive line, run the football with Jahmyr Gibbs? Can they keep Patrick Mahomes on the sideline? I cannot wait for this game. This is going to be an exciting game. The first game, Thursday night, it's always the defending Super Bowl champions. The Chiefs are going to come out. They're going to reveal their championship banner. They're going to give their players the rings, and they're going to come out and play some football, and Detroit's going to be ready for them because I think that Detroit is one of those teams that could sneak up on people. Remember, they have not won the division since 1991. The last time they won a playoff game was 1991. They went all the way to the NFC Championship where they lost to that Washington team, that used to be called something. Anyway, let's go to Sunday. The Texans taking on the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens, J.K. Dobbins is back. Odell Beckham Jr. Lamar Jackson's got a new contract. He's got weapons. Patrick Queen, great middle linebacker. The Ravens overall have a balanced team. They're going up against a rookie coach in DeMeco Ryans, C.J. Stroud, who hasn't really looked all that great in preseason, and a bunch of nobodies. Yes, they do have Dalton Schultz, which I also have on my fantasy team, by the way. I think that Baltimore wins, and they win big. They are a 9.5-point favorite at home. Remember, Baltimore is great at home. You got to factor that in. This is a game that I'm really excited about. Cincinnati Bengals taking on the Cleveland Browns. I think the Browns improved just slightly with Deshaun Watson. Nick Chubb, that's a pretty good combination, and Cleveland does have a good offensive line. David Njoku as the tight end, and then they have Ladd Peoples-Jones and Amari Cooper as the wide receivers. I think that the Cleveland Browns have a pretty good team. They are playing at home, but it is the Bengals. The Bengals are a team that a lot of people like to reach the Super Bowl. But the key is Joe Burrow's got to stay healthy. But Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, that's a great 1-2 combo as the receivers. And their offensive line continues to improve because the Cincinnati Bengals know that they got to protect Joe Burrow. He did get injured in the preseason. He is starting to throw. He might be available against the Cleveland Browns. So that's something to watch out for. And then you have the team that seems to be rebuilding. Baker Mayfield's going to be the starter. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Mike Evans is unhappy. And really a melancholy shout out to the Mike Williams family. That was such a tragedy. The former Buccaneers, Buffalo Bills wide receiver recently passed away. He played at Syracuse, and just want to say thoughts and prayers to his family. But the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on the Minnesota Vikings. Kirk Cousins, when he's not playing in primetime games, he's actually pretty good. And Justin Jefferson, a lot of people picked him on their fantasy team. I think that Justin Jefferson is the best wide receiver in all of football. And they don't have Dalvin Cook, but the Vikings should be fine. I think the Vikings win this game. But I don't think Baker Mayfield is going to be as bad as you think he is. All right, you got the Tennessee Titans taking on the New Orleans Saints. It's a new era in New Orleans with David Carr. Alvin Kamara is going to be suspended. And Michael Thomas, who knows? He might not show up. Chris Olave, pretty good wide receiver. Jarvis Landry. The Saints have some weapons. And the Tennessee Titans, we know that Ryan Tannehill is the starting quarterback, but Will Levis is there in the waiting. And then Malik Willis is their third string quarterback. But Trayvon Burks, I like Trayvon Burks. Derrick Henry is still there. As long as the Titans are running the football with Derrick Henry, they can beat anybody. I saw the Tennessee Titans go into Kansas City and give Kansas City the business. They have beaten the Rams before. They have beaten the Bills. They know how to beat these good teams. I think the Saints are not that good team. I think that Dennis Allen is a very good defensive coordinator. I don't think he's a head coach, but I do think the Saints win this game. Panthers and Falcons. Look, the Falcons, this game could go either way because the Falcons are capable of beating Carolina up in Charlotte. And Charlotte, from time to time, will beat the Falcons in Atlanta. It's at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It's a 1 o'clock kickoff. My thoughts on this game are that I hope that the fans fill the stadium. Otherwise, since the Falcons have been in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, they have not had home field advantage. But if Desmond Ridder is the quarterback, he needs to show some things. He needs to step up. He needs to have a great game against a very good Panther defense. Frank Reich is now the head coach in Carolina. Carolina seems to be a favorite for a lot of people to win the division. Even with a rookie quarterback, remember, they don't have DJ Moore. They don't have Christian McCaffrey. They still have Chuba Hubbard. They still have a very good defense. And Bryce Young is going to find ways to get them involved. But I think the Falcons end up winning this game. It's going to be close. I think this game is going to be close. All right. Was there not a hotter team than Jacksonville last year? Trevor Lawrence was firing on all cylinders, and I think they could have beat the Chiefs last year in the playoffs. It was very close. Travis Etienne, very good running back. I think Tank Bigsby is a very good, solid number 2 behind Travis Etienne. And they have Calvin Ridley. This was a steal from the Atlanta Falcons. The Colts starting Anthony Richardson, more than likely, even though they're playing at home. I think the Jaguars win this game. You'll have to bear with me here. 49ers taking on the Steelers. Some people think that Kenny Pickett is the next best quarterback, taking over for Ben Roethlisberger. It's hard being a Steelers quarterback. But when your coach has not lost, when your coach has not had a losing season, that speaks volumes to what type of coach Mike Tomlin is, because he is a great coach. They got a very good wide receiver in George Pickens, a very underrated running back in Najee Harris. Pat Freiermuth is a very underrated tight end. And that Steelers defense, when TJ Watt plays, look out. I think the 49ers are going to have trouble on that right side of the offensive line. I don't trust Colton McKivitz all the way. I think that they've taken a step back on that offensive line. TJ Watt could have a field day against the Niners. And then Brock Purdy is going to have to watch his right side, because remember in the NFC Championship, Hassan Reddick got him on that side. Brock Purdy is going to have to watch his right side, maybe run the football a little bit of Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell, get that run game going, get George Kittle, if he's available, open and use your weapons. Debo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Jawan Jennings continue to move the football. I don't know what impact Nick Bosa is going to have because he has not played a preseason game and he just signed. He might end up reporting to the team tomorrow and maybe, just maybe, could get a day of practice in, but he doesn't need it. The 49ers are a 2.5-point favorite. See, I knew that line would go up once they signed Nick Bosa. They're a 2.5-point favorite on the road in a hostile environment in the Steel Curtain. And I'm calling the upset. It's because I think the Steelers are a very good football team. And the 49ers, they had a lot of drama, a lot of noise in the offseason with Trey Lance. The 49ers fans might not be sold on Brock Purdy, even though I think that Brock Purdy's going to have a good game. I don't think he's going to have a terrible game, but this is just too much of the Steelers playing at home, playing in a hostile environment, and having a great defense because TJ Watt's going to be healthy. Joe Hayden, great corner. Minka Fitzpatrick. I mean, the Steelers they've got some great players on defense and a much more improved offense because I think that George Pickens is going to take a step forward and be a Pro Bowl wide receiver. So the Steelers win, but it's going to be close. Well, the Arizona Cardinals taking on the Washington Commanders. I don't think anybody in their right mind was looking forward to this game. Josh Dobbs has been named the starter in Arizona. The Washington Commanders have Sam Howell. Look, Commanders fans are a believer in Sam Howell. They're a believer in Eric Bieniemy as an offensive coordinator. Sam Howell's got weapons. Terry McLaurin, you got Brian Robinson Jr. as the running back, a very good O-line, and a very underrated defense with Montez Sweat and Chase Young. The Commanders should win this game. I mean, they're playing at home. I think it's because of their division they're in. Ron Rivera is a good coach, but he's on the hot seat. This is the year if Sam Howell can get the job done. A lot of people are a firm believer in Sam Howell that he is a good quarterback. All right, so those are all the 1 o'clock games. Now let's go into the 4 o'clock games, the 4:30 games. The Las Vegas Raiders, the Jimmy G era begins in Vegas, taking on Russell Wilson, Sean Payton. That era begins in Denver. I think that Russell Wilson gets the win. It's at home. Sean Payton's a good coach. He's got something to prove. Dolphins and Chargers. Boy, this is going to be a fun game. I'm hoping if you look at Dolphins and Chargers or Eagles and Patriots, I'm hoping that the primetime game is Dolphins and Chargers because you got Tua Tagovailoa going up against Justin Herbert. But majority of America is going to get Eagles Patriots. It's just the way it is. And that's kind of a shame because I don't think the Patriots are really all that good. The Eagles are pretty good. Jalen Hurts is going to continue being a top 5 quarterback. Look at what he did in the Super Bowl. I don't think the Eagles drop off that much, but I do think that they're right there with the 49ers as the 2 best teams in the NFC. You got the Packers and Bears. Fingers crossed. I got Justin Fields on my fantasy team. Is the Packers completely sold on Jordan Love? Because the Packers have a good team around them. Jordan Love, he's got Randy Watson, he's got Romeo Doubs, he's got the young receivers that Aaron Rodgers didn't want to throw to for some reason. But you also have Aaron Jones. You have a decent defense with Jair Alexander, Rashawn Gary. You have one of the Smith brothers. Preston Smith. I think the Ladarius Smith is in Minnesota. Very good game. It's in Chicago. I think the Bears end up winning. They are favored by 1. But I just don't think the Packers are going to be as dominant as they were without Aaron Rodgers. They might be down to earth, back to the middle of the pack, maybe going, no pun intended on that one, maybe going 9-8, 8-9. All right. Rams and Seahawks. Boy, who who did not have a better offseason than Seattle? Their draft picks, Kenneth Walker the third is just only going to get better. You got DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith Jigba. Pete Carroll and that Seahawks organization has put all the faith in Geno Smith. Geno Smith, he's going to prove that he was not a one-hit wonder in Seattle. And Seattle is going to be right there with the 49ers as one of the best teams in the NFC. And the big acquisition that Seattle got was bringing back Bobby Wagner. That was huge for the Seahawks and the 12th man. The Sunday night game, doesn't it seem like it's always Cowboys and Giants? Once again, the Cowboys and Giants. Danny Dimes, he got that big contract. Saquon Barkley, you got some good pieces. The Giants have a very good offensive line. They got Kayvon Thibodeau. They got Leonard Williams. They got a very good defense. Brian Dable in his second year. This game is being played in the Meadowlands, but I think the Cowboys win. Cowboys are a 3.5-point favorite. Look, if the Cowboys don't win, then we have to hear it from local sports talk the next day, especially Skip Bayless, who will just come out and he will trash the Cowboys. But if the Cowboys win, he is on cloud nine and he is the happiest person out there. So it's funny to listen to the media after the Cowboys lose or win. And then we finally have the Monday night game, the Buffalo Bills taking on the New York Jets, the debut of Aaron Rodgers. Wow, that's got to be exciting. So I went through the NFL week 1. This is really a special time to go over football. But why don't we go ahead and take a break? We're going to take a break here on the show. We're going to go pay some bills. And when we come back, I'm going to talk about college football week 2. You don't want to go anywhere. It's a Sports Beat. Richard Holdridge. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live. And you are listening to us on WQEE 99.1 FM, The Key, home of Southern Sports in Noonan, Georgia. That's exciting to be part of the Metro Atlanta market. And I love this show. Been doing the show for about 3.5 years. I always love it when it's football season because I am passionate about high school football, college football, and the NFL. And I love talking about football. We do have some college games, some big college games. We have a top 10 game later Saturday night. I will be glued in front of the TV to watch Texas and Alabama. But let's go ahead and start with Thursday night, tonight. Murray State, the Racers, taking on the Louisville Cardinal. Louisville, after getting a come-from-behind win over Georgia Tech. And then on Friday, you got Indiana State, the Sycamores, taking on Indiana. Their defense actually held Ohio State to 23 points. Not too bad. And then Illinois taking on Kansas. Those are the Friday games. Saturday's games starting at 11 a.m. Boy, these kickoff times just get earlier and earlier every year. Vanderbilt and Wake Forest on the ACC network. You got Ball State taking on Georgia on the SEC network at noon. And don't be fooled. This is a noon kickoff. Hopefully Georgia can ride the ship and they don't come out flat like they did against UT Martin and they get a convincing win, because if they don't, they could fall in the rankings, because I think that Florida State could easily make an argument for being the number 1 team in the country because of what they did against LSU. Youngstown State and Ohio State, it's the Maurice Claret Bowl or the Jim Tressel Bowl, however you want to call it. Delaware and Penn State. You got Notre Dame on the road against NC State. Utah taking on Baylor. Baylor with that heartbreaking loss to TJ Finley and Texas State. Utah pretty confident after beating Florida, but the the situation with Cam Rising, we don't know if he's going to play against the Baylor Bears. Troy taking on Kansas State. Both teams are 1-1. Nebraska taking on the Colorado Buffaloes. And you don't think Dion is excited about Colorado's home opener? Colorado, who drew 7 million viewers, has really been the talk of college football on the national level. Delaware State taking on Army. Purdue taking on Virginia Tech. Holy Cross taking on Boston College. James Madison taking on Virginia. This is in Charlottesville. This is going to be a very emotional scene for the Virginia Cavaliers after the tragedy they suffered last year. And this really is going to remind me back in 2007 when Virginia Tech first had their home opener after the Virginia Tech shooting. It was a very somber moment, but they had to play football. It was a healing process. And I'm happy to see Virginia back out on the gridiron for that healing process. South Carolina State taking on Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech let one slip away against Louisville last Friday night. New Hampshire, Central Michigan, Eastern Illinois, Bowling Green. Charleston Southern taking on Clemson. Clemson fell all the way to number 25, and I think that the dynasty is over for the Clemson Tigers. Eastern Kentucky and Kentucky. You know, if Kentucky just continues winning, I start becoming a believer in Devin Leary. But their schedule gets a lot tougher. Southern Utah taking on BYU. UNLV taking on Michigan. This is the 3:30 game on CBS. And UNLV is not very good at football. Jim Harbaugh still suspended for Michigan. Michigan, they beat East Carolina 30-0 last week. Mike Hart is going to be the interim coach. But I can't believe this is the 3:30 game on CBS. This is all they could come up with. But when I look at on paper, when I see UNLV versus Michigan, I was going back to the early 90s. I would have loved to have seen the early 90s UNLV Running Rebels taking on the Fab Five Michigan Wolverines. How cool would that be? So anyway, I thought about that when I saw that matchup, UNLV versus Michigan. Ole Miss and Tulane, yes, both teams are ranked. Tulane, remember, they went to the Cotton Bowl last year. They beat USC. They're not a bad team. Texas A&M on the road against Miami. That's going to be a great game. I want to see how this Texas A&M offense with Bobby Petrino works in Coral Gables on the road. You know, if Miami wants to prove that they are a decent team, they got to win this game. They really do. Iowa and Iowa State, that's always a big rivalry game, just as long as they're not betting on their team. Richmond and Michigan State, you got UTEP and Northwestern. Western Michigan, Syracuse, Miami of Ohio against UMass. Texas State taking on Texas San Antonio. You got Wagner and Navy, Southern Illinois, Northern Illinois, Texas Southern, Toledo, Kent State, Arkansas, Marshall, East Carolina, Cal Poly, San Jose State. Yeah, it's a shame I'm not in California anymore. I would have got up for that one. Portland State taking on Wyoming after Wyoming with an emotional win over Texas Tech. That's what college football is all about. Austin Peay taking on Tennessee. I want to see how far Joe Milton can throw the football. You got Southeast Louisiana taking on Jake Crane's alma mater, South Alabama. Big shout out to Jake Crane from Crane & Company. Appalachian State taking on North Carolina. Drake May. Yeah, he's a baller. SMU taking on Oklahoma. Oklahoma had a statement win against Arkansas State and Butch Jones. 73-0. Oklahoma's trying to prove a point that they can get back to the top of the mountain in college football, taking on an SMU team that is set to bolt for the ACC in 2024. Duke is in the rankings at number 21, taking on Lafayette, or Lafayette, however you want to pronounce it. We pronounce it Lafayette in Alabama, by the way. New Mexico State taking on Liberty, without Hugh Freeze, but Liberty is 1-0. Duquesne taking on West Virginia, UAB taking on Georgia Southern, Ohio taking on Florida Atlantic, Louisiana taking on Old Dominion, Morgan State taking on Akron. You have Fordham taking on Buffalo. North Texas taking on Florida International. Cincinnati taking on Pitt. Very underrated game. You got the Big 12 Cincinnati going up against the ACC Pitt. That's actually going to be a pretty good game. Oregon taking on Texas Tech on the road. Let's see. Oregon put up 81 points against Portland State. How many points are they going to put up against Texas Tech? Jacksonville State 2-0 in the FBS, taking on Coastal Carolina. And no, Coastal Carolina is not coached by Coach David Bennett. Remember, you need to be more like a dog. I miss that guy. I know that was my favorite part about Coastal Carolina. Be more like a dog. I'm telling you, I love that. Coastal Carolina, UConn and Georgia State. You got Northwestern Louisiana Tech. I want to talk about this Texas-Alabama game. Alabama is favored by 7. If Quinn Ewers played the entire game last year, who knows what could have happened? But Bryce Young is not there. Can Jalen Milroe make a play to put Alabama on top? I do think Alabama could win this game by 2 touchdowns. Bama is still Bama. But if Texas pulls off the upset, are Texas fans going to come out and say, we're back? I don't know. It's something to think about. Northwestern State taking on Louisiana Tech, MTSU, and Missouri. You got Houston Christian taking on Western Kentucky. UCF taking on Boise State. Boy, that would have been a fun game like 5 years ago. Houston taking on Rice. Florida A&M taking on South Florida. Memphis taking on Arkansas State. Idaho taking on Nevada. Grambling taking on LSU. Wisconsin taking on Washington State. That's a 7:30 game on ABC. Remember, the Pac-12 is undefeated. Florida is taking on McNeese on ESPNU. Florida's got to have to get back in the win column. I don't see a scenario if Florida can get to a bowl game if they will lose against teams like Tennessee, Kentucky. Losing at Utah doesn't really help their cause. Let's see what else we got. Charlotte and Maryland. We got Eastern Michigan and Minnesota, Arizona and Mississippi State. I love these Pac-12 SEC matchups. I wish they had more of these. They never play each other in a bowl game for some reason. I don't know why. Temple and Rutgers. You got Furman and South Carolina. UCLA and San Diego State. That's a fun matchup. That's a 7:30 game on CBS. Air Force, Sam Houston. Nichols, TCU. Lamar and Louisiana Monroe. Tennessee Tech taking on New Mexico. And then Idaho State taking on Utah State. Southern Miss taking on Florida State. UC Davis taking on Oregon State. Eastern Washington taking on Fresno State. Remember, Fresno State had a win over Purdue, an upset win. It's always great when Fresno State is good in college football because it gives the average college football fan in California something to cheer for, because to this day, I still believe Fresno State has the most passionate fans in California. Stanford and USC. Look, this is not 10 years ago when Stanford was dominating this rivalry. USC is legit. Caleb Williams is running that offense. Even though I don't think USC has a defense, Stanford has just been awful since David Shaw left. And I'm talking, he was checked out like 3 years ago. That's what I'm talking about. Let's talk about Auburn and Cal. Yes, Hugh Freeze in Auburn has to make that trip all the way to Berkeley. I still think Auburn wins, but I mean, come on. Not ideal. Oklahoma State and Arizona State, and then, boy, at midnight. I mean, college football from 11 o'clock in the morning, well, 10 if you count college game day, all the way to midnight. University of Albany taking on Hawaii. And that was it. Week 2 for FBS. I mean, you still have FCS games. I mean, I got time to talk about FCS. I mean, we have Mercer taking on Morehead State. We do have some games locally as LaGrange College is in action at Callaway Stadium. 6 p.m. taking on Berry College. And then Point University back at home taking on Thomas University. So those local teams are in action. And then West Georgia taking on Texas A&M Kingsville. That is a team out of NCAA Division II. Same with Shorter University up in Rome. So there is college football in Georgia, not just at the FBS level, but at the FCS level, NCAA Division II, NCAA Division III, and NAIA, because Point University is in the NAIA. All right, so with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about high school football. I cannot wait. Thrift and I are going to be at Kinnett Stadium for Shaw taking on Northside. It is Northside's homecoming. Kickoff at 7. You can catch that game on Georgia Alabama Sports Live. And then on Friday, we are going to be traveling up to Woodbury, Georgia for Calvary Christian taking on Flint River Academy. Some of the other games that is going on. And on tomorrow's show, I will have my high school football preview review show. Right now, the leading vote getter for high school game of the week for the sports beat is Beauregard and Valley. And so you voted for it on Twitter. You also have a massive game, Central, on the road. Number 2 ranked according to the Alabama Writers Association. The number 2 ranked Central team taking on Enterprise, who's ranked number 3 after a big upset over Auburn 17-16 last week. And then you have the Pulpwood Classic, Callaway taking on Heard County. And then you have Northeast taking on Carver. So those games are going on Friday. Boy, I tell you, we've really flown by this show. I haven't really had time to go talk about the Braves. I think right now I'm getting a score update. Yeah, the Cardinals beat the Braves 11-6. Spencer Strider got roughed up, and the Braves have lost 3 straight. I still think the Braves are going to be fine, but you lose to one of the worst teams in the National League, to the Cardinals. It seems like the Braves can't figure out the Cardinals, and it goes back to, and I'm not trying to ruffle feathers, but it goes back to 2018, that Game 5 where Mike Fultonevich pitched, and they gave up the 10 runs in the first inning. You remember that game? Yeah, the Cardinals have always been a bad matchup for the Braves, and that's why I never want to see the Braves have to play the Cardinals in the postseason. Well, I got to tell you, that is all the time I have here in the show. But it's been a fun show. I've had a great time going on Facebook Live and giving you the sports you deserve. Don't forget that you can catch a replay of this episode Monday through Friday from 2 to 3 on WQEE 99.1 FM The Key. I hope everybody has a great rest of your night. Be safe out there. Enjoy all the games this week. We will talk to you later. Good night, everybody.